Hello, my friends. This is Andy coming to you live from Ventura County. Hetty will be here in a minute. She's busy getting some things straightened out. As we were going live, we had to run out and go get some dinner and come back and take care of a couple things before we got started. But what we're going to be talking about today, and I know it's been a while since we've had an Andy Falco show. It's mostly because of the frustration that I'm having right now with what's going on with law enforcement. And what do I mean by that is that there's so much going on and so much to try to wrap my head around that the subject matter is huge. It has to do with the media, of course. It has to do with politicians. It has to do with a demographic of our country, namely Democrats, who wish chaos upon our country so that they can push through some of their horrific agenda. And how to address that and talk about it, it's just so huge. So many different things are happening. It was just simply impossible. Every action taken by law enforcement was looking at some type of racist action involving armed suspects that were resisting. You have accidents that were being made by cops that are obviously mistakes are made all the time, but an accident where obviously somebody dies, it's going to be a little bit more brought out into the media and obviously be viewed at as a racist act, even though it was simply an accident. And so all these things were happening, and it's difficult to not talk about it as a police officer of 21 years, anti-police department, somebody who's still involved in law enforcement. I still look at on a regular basis criminal cases that involve law enforcement, whether it's federal border patrol, city, state law enforcement agencies. And so I'm still very active in a lot of things that are going on. And if anybody were to see racism in law enforcement, I would be one of those people that would see it. Because not only was I a police officer for 21 years, not only did I go through 2 police academies, but I continually look at cases, not only in the United States, but in Canada also. And I can tell you in the hundreds of cases that I've been asked to look at, none of them have involved any level of racism whatsoever. In none of the academies that I went to did it say anything, in regard to our teachings that had to do with dealing with race, other than if we were being told something about, say, for instance, domestic violence. We would be taught about certain types of things that we need to keep in mind when entering a home of a Hispanic family. That the father is believed to be the ultimate king of his castle in a Hispanic family. Not that it is in other ones, but that there's a chance that if you address the woman in the house first, that would cause your call to be more difficult, because now you'd be looked at as an adversary in a domestic violence call or some type of domestic issue, as opposed to somebody that's there to try to help, barring any kind of criminal action, say some type of violence towards one person or the other. That we would be told about the different ethnic issues when going from a house in regard to the Middle East or an Asian family. That's the only time race ever got brought up. Now, we would also be talked about that, hey, you're going to run into people that are going to accuse you of being racist, and how to understand how that happens, that kind of stuff, but never on the other side that we need to look at a certain demographic as more criminal than the other. Never was that the case in either one of the academies that I went through. One academy I went through was ran mostly by LAPD officers. The second academy I went to was mostly run by Orange County Sheriff deputies. And it didn't matter. It was all about, how to handle a call, how to handle your weapon, how to deal with traffic accidents, car stops, pedestrian stops, and so forth. And then, of course, the physical aspects of it. So also, as I went out on the street, I had FTOs. FTOs are field training officers, dealing with the public. Again, we would be accused of being racist, but never we were ever taught to be racist, or that we handle Black people differently than Hispanic people or white people or Asian people. And so as a person who still investigates law enforcement, I've never brought that into any of those cases either. If I were to see it, because I'm often asked by attorneys to look at a case from a defense side of things, I am often looking at the police department or police officer involved in the case as the so-called adversary in the case that I'm involved in. And so my job is to look to see if there's any wrongdoing. And again, in the hundreds of cases I looked at, I have not seen any racism involved in what happened in the case. If the officers did something wrong, it wasn't because of racism, it's because they wanted to catch the bad guy, and they got a little bit too eager to catch the bad guy and did things they weren't supposed to do. In other words, search a vehicle without probable cause, not because they're racist, not because of the color of the skin of the person that was involved in the case, but because they just really wanted to catch the bad guy. Right? Or they wanted to seize the narcotics or seize the money behind the narcotics. So in investigating those cases, surely I would see it and I would look at it, and never in any of those cases that I see any racism. Why do I tell you all that? Is because everything that cops are doing right now is looked at as racist. We currently are not enforcing certain laws in certain cities and Democratic run cities. They believe that certain laws like petty theft or malicious mischief, and even, I guess, in some cases, violent crimes, is that if we enforce those laws, that somehow that's racist, that we're not supposed to arrest people that commit crimes any longer because it's looked at as a racist issue. And regardless if a young woman is getting ready to stab another woman, that if the officer gets involved, that he's racist because he, for whatever reason, it shouldn't stop somebody from stabbing somebody else. And so we begin to look at these incidents. We have to wonder why the media and the politicians are doing this. And the only reason that in the history of the world that this type of thing has been looked at, and as far as the racial part of it, in causing racial discord between one race and another, is to cause chaos. And so this is what we're seeing right now, is that we have a Democrat party who is doing their best to cause chaos. And so as I was talking to Hedia about doing the show, her latest article has to do with where is the church in all this chaos? Where are the pastors, and where are they speaking out? Why are the churches not speaking out? Because when we look at the church that we like to go to, which is Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills with Pastor Jack, is that he's not afraid to speak out on political issues, but a lot of churches are. And so this is kind of one of the things that I think that the message that she wanted to get across in this article, which we'll ask her about in 1 second, is about what she thinks in what she's brought up in the article is, how is it that a church should be involved in what's going on in our country. So here's Hedia.
Hi.
And I'm going to take off my frame off here. I heard you making a lot of noise down there.
Sorry.
You're busy. You should see all the boxes. It is. If you didn't watch our devotional, we talked about that. We're in the middle of a move. So that's why there's nothing on the shelf behind us, but there's a lot of other stuff going on around us. And so that hence the little delay here. So coming back to our, I was kind of laying a little bit of a background that we're just simply in chaos. A lot of it has to do around law enforcement. A lot of it has to do with COVID. A lot of it has to do with the lies that the media is bringing up in a lot of different issues. But in law enforcement, in your article, you bring up some incidents that have recently occurred where law enforcement were forced to use deadly force. One of them is an accident of using deadly force. How do those things happening in our world involve the church? Where does the church come in all this? Is it coming in?
Well, so what my point in using those was that the standard. So in my experience, I was training and consulting for police departments across the country. So either as a contractor for the U.S. government or the FBI directly when I was at headquarters. I'd worked with the FBI for years, and we were developing terrorism prevention programs. And they often involved community members and building these multidisciplinary teams to de-escalate. Very famous expression. How do we de-escalate? And the line always was, and this was very important to the police and to the FBI, that once there was a threat of violence, the person was considered a threat to society, community actors were removed from the equation. They were like, that's kinetic. That is the responsibility of law enforcement. It was a very bright line. I have all these beautiful graphs that we drew about how that was the department, that was the lane of the police. And now the officers involved in an armed suspect in both scenarios. So one was when this gentleman was trying to outrun the police and he threw his weapon. But the other one was the knife wielding teenager. And in both of them, they're like, well, you should have de-escalated because the girl grew up in a foster home. Yeah. And I was like, de-escalate? She was about to stab the other victim. Like, the officer has seconds to make a decision, but now they're being told they need to de-escalate. And what I said, why I brought the church in is because Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the Muslim Congresswoman, was like, all police are racist. It's time to dismantle all police and get rid of this oppressive system. And I'm thinking to myself, like, where are the rational people in America that are like, what are you talking about, dismantling the police? So even if you don't have an opinion on, or you're confused about systematic racism and injustice, what about the issue of an armed suspect and just the concepts of law and order? And so my comment was that the church is just absent from the dialogue. We have conservative pundits on one side doing a great job trying to articulate the issues. We've got the left going crazy about, dismantle the system, its oppression, their Marxist slogans. But like, the church is quiet.
Right.
Like, the church is not commenting. I mean, our society's falling apart at the seams. Our law and order is being removed. Our values. So they come for the babies. We say nothing. They come for our kids and teach critical race theory. We say nothing. They remove law and order. We say nothing. Like, at what point is the church going to stand up and be like, okay, wait a minute. You got to stop what you're doing. And it's like, what, once you remove your tax exempt status and you can't hold on to your building because of the tax liability, is the church suddenly going to get into this discussion? But the church is just noticeably absent from the national dialogue.
If we go back to our history, the United States history, and we were talking about the Black Robe Regiment, that the church was very involved in politics at the time.
Absolutely.
Do you have any ideas on how that changed? Did we just simply think, I don't know, how does all this change? How do we suddenly go silent?
I think it's the gradual secularization of American culture. I think that I know from my experience, 20 plus years with the State Department, it's an extremely secular organization, our U.S. State Department, which deals overseas. So they just don't understand religion. I had President Obama tell me and 5 other people in a private meeting, he doesn't get religion. So I think it's this gradual secularization of our country that we've taken the establishment clause, which means that the government should not establish religion, to mean the church can't be involved, period. And that's just wrong. And so we have no voice in the public space. We're not advocating for biblical concepts. We're not even protecting the biblical values that we have. And we're ceding the ground to the crazies.
Absolutely. Real quick, I just want to say hi to Priscilla for being on. Hi, Priscilla. Nice to see you. Hope you had time to read the article. Yeah. Just my words. Hey, Loretta, nice to see you. Amy.
Hi, hello again.
It is sad.
Yeah.
And people worshipped him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If they only really knew, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so not only was the Black Robe Regiment, so so whenever I advocate for something that I believe is biblical, I refer back to the biblical concepts. And I said, all the way from the beginning, from Moses on down towards the disciples, and then when they were apostles, spoke truth to power. And they stood up, Moses stood up to Pharaoh. Elijah stood up to King Ahab. I mean, they've constantly been speaking up when lewdness and debauchery and sin took over a society, it was the prophets and the anointed of God that came forward and said, this has got to stop. So where are those people now? Where are the righteous people other than Pastor Jack that are saying this is unacceptable?
Well, one of the things that I like that Pastor Jack does is he will play something like a Prager University that goes into some detail about the truth about certain things. I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and some of these things got brought up, and unfortunately, I didn't have time to kind of sort them out. But if you were to ask conservatives about how many unarmed black men are shot. Now, again, the reason I went through all that layout about my history is because I want you to understand that I'm talking from a little bit of a place of authority.
Of course.
I've been doing this for a while, and I'm looking at cases all the time. I have experience of being in 2 different police academies. I'm telling you that there's no systemic racism in law enforcement. I would tell you if there was. I honestly would tell you. Absolutely. And I'm looking at all kinds of cases. So if you ask conservatives how many unarmed black men are killed, so they would say somewhere between about 10 and 100 a year. The truth is, one of the last times they checked, it's like 10. It's 10. The truth is 10. And so if you were to poll conservatives, they would get pretty close to the correct answer. Some fringe people might say 100, just because they too may bounce around between CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, right? And so they may get the idea that there's a lot more than there is. 10. That is not to say that those 10 weren't violent, like trying to grab a weapon or using a vehicle sometimes. And there's a number of they're attacking and punching the cop, and he has no choice. One officer, his orbital bone in his face was broken before he had a chance to get a shot off. Because what can end up happening if you get disabled as a police officer through being punched in the face, your weapon becomes his weapon. And so you sometimes have to use your weapon in order to save your life. But they asked liberals, Democrats, what they thought, and it was anywhere between 1,000 to 10,000 annually killed by law enforcement. That's what their belief is. That's what they've been taught.
It's crazy.
So going back to Jack,
Rashida Tlaib's comment that our system is broken and it's oppressive and we have to dismantle it.
But how do you as an adult not go, well, 10,000 seems like a lot of people. I'm going to Google this and find out it's only 10. I don't mean to say it in a bad way. 10 is bad, right? But why were they resisting? Why were they attacking law enforcement? Those things need to be looked at also. But let's just go with the numbers, 10. And if you're going off the basis that there's 10,000 unarmed black men killed annually, that's where we hear somebody like what's the guy that plays basketball? I forget his name, but that's where he says a black man is killed every day. Some guys, I've heard them say 3 unarmed black men are killed a day. This is where they're getting this information. So back to Pastor Jack, what he does in the church, and this is what every church, and they go, listen, we're going to educate you on what the truth is. And that's a great place to start, is in the church. That would be one solution.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump on what you were saying.
No, that's absolutely true. But I mean, they have to be involved in the national dialogue where they're going on TV shows or they're writing and saying, you know what, this isn't a biblical standard. We need to maintain the values this country's founded on. We have conservatives that are Christians that are doing it, but why isn't there? And another thing I asked for was a national prayer for repentance. Is basically throughout the Bible, the Lord teaches, if my people turn to me, I will protect them, I will defend them, I will forgive them and bless their land. But where's our national calls of repentance and prayer? We have a national prayer day and God wasn't even mentioned with the president, so we have to be a little bit more. The current president.
When you say president, I think of President Trump.
He's still your president.
Yeah, I still can't wrap I call him. I've called him everything but the president.
Sleepy Joe.
You name it. Dementia Joe, Sleepy Joe, Dimwit Joe. I know it's not very nice, but he what did he say the other day? Dot gum. What was it? It had to do like pandemic.gum or something like that. Like you can't even get that right. So anyway, the other thing that just really quick, this is not on the topic of law enforcement, but when it comes to COVID, the same thing kind of happens where you ask conservatives, how likely are you to be hospitalized if you get infected with COVID? The answer is like 1%. It's 1%, right? And most of us know that. Right. In our family, 1% of us went into the hospital. Yes. Me. Yes. Out of all of us that got it. right? And we have a lot of people, so we're almost like a test case, right? And so, but we know, like you guys are crazy walking around with masks on your face outside, and even the kids being masked. It's the silliness, because we know that kids are very unlikely to they can get infected, but they don't end up in the hospital, and they don't get hardly any illness whatsoever. So we know that. Democrats are asked and they're polled, and there was a large percent of them that believe that 45% of the people that catch COVID end up in the hospital.
Oh my God.
And that's, so now I never even thought about that.
Oh,
I just thought they're just
scary.
crazy. They just like wearing masks.
No wonder they jump across the street when they don't see you wearing a mask, you know? Like, oh.
So they, so they take these polls, but I
if
mean,
you had
it's
a 50-50 chance of ending up in the hospital, I'd probably jump to the other side of the street too. I mean, how do they walk around like that?
Yeah, but there's a lot let's see, 41% of Democrats say over half. So 41% of Democrats
50-50
say that over half of the people who get COVID have to be hospitalized. Over half.
Wow.
That's
what leads to their insanity.
So there's a little bit of me that kind of feels like a little sad for them.
Yes.
A little bit. It's kind of like when I was dealing as a sex crimes detective. Once I would talk to the suspects involved in a child molest, that they would tell me their story, and I would go, no wonder they think it's okay to molest children, because some of the stories were just horrific. You know, how they were treated and how they were raised, that they were molested their entire life. And so when they became adults, they began to molest children. And there's a little bit, not very much, but there's a little bit like, I kind of feel sorry and feel bad.
Yeah. And
so I've been calling these morons like, why are you wearing a mask? But if they believe that there's a 50% chance you end up in the hospital because you catch COVID, no wonder they're acting like dimwits.
Right.
No wonder they're like running around with masks, and they're swimming with masks on and driving their cars with masks on.
Exactly. Because you have 50-50 chance of ending up in the hospital. That's pretty scary.
That's what they're being told. I mean, if you only watch CNN or MSNBC, that you gotta
exactly. And that's why Danielle says, so who's doing the misinformation, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we had the what is it, committee hearing or whatever to decide whether Trump gets to go back on Facebook, and they decide no, we need to protect the American people against misinformation.
Yeah.
It's like the Twilight Zone.
I just found out Dan Bongino does a great job today of breaking down some of these. Yesterday and today, he's been talking about that group of people that were, they called it Facebook Supreme Court.
Oh, right. With the guy from like Indonesia and Singapore.
Yeah.
And
well, I think it was, I forget what it was, but
the Socialist Party of Sweden.
It was over 50% of them are paid for by George Soros.
Yeah.
They are paid for by George Soros.
There you go.
Yeah. Who hates
kangaroo court?
Yes. But yeah, I mean, this is what they're getting for information. So a silent church is doing nobody any good, even though the Democrats
not
are
believers
not very,
or unbelievers. It's not doing anybody any good.
But it would help get the message out. Like if you're going to church getting the correct information, and you have somebody living in your home that's a Democrat, you'd be able to say, hey, what the information you're getting is so far off base.
Exactly.
I mean, that is both those things I just told you are so far off base. And those are the two biggest things that are causing us problems right now. Right? The pandemic, people believe it's going to, if you have a 50-50 chance to end up in the hospital and possibly dying.
Officer involved.
But in fact, it's 1% or less. Or officer involved shootings involving unarmed black men. It's really just 10, and they think it's 10,000.
And I wonder what that percentage is of the population. 10 people.
Microscopic,
right?
0.00 something, and then in the number of calls. I mean, I would handle 35 to 45 calls a night as a police officer, just me by myself, for 21 years of doing that. On some busy nights, it was 50 calls a night.
Just think of that: 35. Let's say the average was 35 per officer per police department across the entire country.
Of tens of thousands of police officers.
Of tens of thousands of police
and
officers.
I was in Anaheim. Imagine LAPD, New York.
Yeah. But imagine the entire country. And only 10
violent suspects. Not by, I mean, maybe the one girl that got shot. I mean, she was in bed with a drug dealer and knocked on the door, and he had a gun and he shot first. And she ended up getting shot in the crossfire. So she's really the one that, she's the most famous one. She wasn't acting violent, but she was her boyfriend that she was with shot at the cops first. Right. They were returning fire. So other than her, the other ones that I know of are all violent suspects or somebody doing something, resisting arrest. You know, it wasn't. And again, the belief is that the cops are just driving down the road. Oh, there's a black guy. We'll shoot and kill him. That's the other narrative that you get from people.
Right.
That's their belief. That's what they've been told on a regular basis. So back to the church. The churches just need to stop. They need to stop being silent. Is what I was looking for.
Absolutely.
And we need to also stop being the silent majority, as we're often called.
Absolutely. And get on our knees. We got to start praying.
Yeah.
The way Pastor Jack explained the Black Robe Regiment, and if you research it, and they have actually the website, blackroberegiment.org, it was the pastors in the pulpit that gave the soldiers and the founding fathers their passion, their dedication, their lifting them up to believe what they were doing was the right thing to fight the tyranny of the British. And they really depended on those pastors to reinforce them. So just imagine cops are going to their local churches looking for encouragement, looking for support, looking for validation, and the churches are quiet.
Yep. Well, I love what DeSantis did today. I don't know if you heard this, but he had a meeting, a press meeting. What is that called?
Press conference.
Press conference. Oh my gosh! At a press conference today, I think it was today, where it said he had a sign that said defund, but it had a round circle with a line on the D part. So fund police officers, and what he's doing is he's giving bonuses to police officers that do a good job.
Oh, nice.
So he's rewarding police officers for doing good work.
That's
and making
fantastic.
good decisions, as opposed to what everybody else wants to do, and that's demonize police officers and defund law enforcement and dismantle law enforcement, and calling for that kind of thing. DeSantis he's killing it for the Conservative Party.
Just living by example.
Just so many people are leaving New York and California, moving to Florida and Texas and all these other places, because why would you want to live that way? I was driving here again, and I have to drive through the heart of LA, coming down the 101 freeway, and the homeless, just the bridges with the homeless on it, and the homeless that are on the sides of the freeway. And I'm driving, I'm thinking, in Orange County, we're pretty blessed. And here where you live, you're pretty blessed, right? And in the middle, we have LA, right? And we can drive around and we see green trees. We were just driving somewhere just a minute ago, just before we went on our devotional. And I go, wow, it's so beautiful and clean, and there's no potholes in the road, and it's a smooth drive.
Westlake Village.
And it's so, and then we get in Orange County, and you got kind of the same thing, right? Yeah. You got no potholes, you don't have any homeless, you got the occasional on the off ramps and that kind of stuff, but just for the most part, but then you got this democratic mess of Los Angeles, and it's just an embarrassment. You got Hollywood there, where you have people that come from all over the world to come to Hollywood to go down the road with the stars, the what is it called?
Walk of Fame.
Walk of Fame, yeah. And you got people coming from other countries and that's what they see. That's what they get to see. That's what their vision of the United States of America is, right? They land in LAX and they drive there to see crap in the streets, or they go to San Francisco to see the same thing. It's just really an embarrassment. And you have to take that contrast between Orange County is quasi a little Republican area in California. And you can just simply see the difference there. You have a lot of conservatives here also in this area. And so there's the contrast right there. Just driving down the freeway, like Orange County, nice, fresh air. You don't smell any urine. Don't smell any feces. Right? And then you drive through LA. What's that smell? And then you get here. Fresh air again. Like, what would make you want to be a Democrat when you're driving from Republican, Democrat, Republican?
That's crazy.
It's just like, what a contrast.
It is.
They're moving out like crazy. We lost a Senate seat because so many people are leaving California.
And yet the prices are doubling. The housing is so weird.
I would put up this guy. I mean, I appreciate your name. A good Democrat is a dead one, but it's just, I feel bad putting it up because that probably isn't a message we really want to have, but they are simply destroying our country. But I would not call them to be killed or dead. I'm going to say, I'm going to stop short of that. They just need to understand what they're doing to this country. They're destroying it. And for what is do you have any ideas as to why they think this is it just simply they want a socialist country. They figure if they cause enough chaos that they'll allow the government to be the mommies.
Or why do people accept it, or why do the leaders? Because
Well,
to me, they're
guess
so
what?
slightly different.
Okay, let's talk about the difference.
Well, I mean, to me, the leaders it's very much intentional. It's part of a Marxist doctrine to try to destroy this country, and that, I don't mean that hyperbolic. That I'm not trying to be dramatic. I've seen this phenomena in countries across the world, whether it's in Latin America or Muslim countries. It's a deconstruction of the existing society to supplant it with whatever evil ideology. In Muslim countries, it was radical Islam. And in our country, it's Marxism. A failed communist experience, it failed in every country in which it's operated. They now want to try to bring to America. It's one of the few Western countries that was never touched by communism, except for like the McCarthy area to a small extent. But for some reason, they think they can bring that to this country and it would be successful. And I think, honestly, there are just millions of Americans that are fed misinformation and that have good hearts in the things, like for the homeless issue. Their heart goes out to homeless people. They feel like we need to be taking care of them. That's why they give money to homeless projects, but they don't realize that this is not the way to take care of it. And they're not given any alternatives for better ways in which to handle this. And so the idea of Republican small government, they think is cruel.
Well, they're being taught that in schools and in colleges, universities.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like what Apple did to get kids to start using Macintosh computers and Apple computers, is that they gave schools Apple computers, right? So the kids would start using them. And now we can see the benefit of that. They had the long plan, right?
Yep.
Right.
That's what they
Steve
do.
Jobs was smart enough to go, you know what, if we put them in the schools now, about 10 years from now, they'll start buying more computers, more
Every
Apple
country
computers.
in the world, that methodology works.
Yeah. They just
start with education and work your way up.
And that's what they say about the Middle Eastern terrorists, is that they don't need to do anything today.
Long game.
It may be 10, 15 years.
Look, we're
now.
Self-destructing. They don't even need to put a terrorist attack. It's like
Oh
they're just
God.
watching us self-destruct.
You are so right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then they're messing with our history. If they can make even our history be bad.
Critical race theory.
Yeah.
It's on the cover of all the newspapers around town, is that people are suddenly waking up to, oh wait, what? You're going to teach white people are bad? And now suddenly all the white people are a little bit concerned. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because you could be really woke, but as soon as they start teaching your kid that basically your roots are bad and your existence is bad and you need to apologize for it, everybody starts to, like, their ears kind of perk up, like, oh wait, that doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of research. One of the things that I did not know that I just found out is that out of all the slaves that were sold back in the even before the United States existed, were sold by Black warlords in Africa, by the way.
Yes, they were selling their own people. Yes,
that came over to North America. Only something like, and I don't have the numbers exactly right, but it's a small number, like 4%. Only 4% came to what would be the United States. The rest went to South America. And the millions that they say, and so they like to say millions of slaves were sold to the, and became slaves in the United States. The United States is a racist country. Well, again, 4% is too many, but the majority all went to South America. And when they were coming to what would be the United States, most of the people that owned them were the French and the people from Great Britain. And some of the other countries that were on the soil before the United States became the United States.
See that?
And so you really just need to look at it. And then from the time that we became the United States, abolition was always in progress. The desire to stop slavery was always continuously in process. It never stopped. Of course, there was, eventually the Civil War, which really made the biggest difference of them all. But it was always working towards abolition. They talk about Thomas Jefferson. Jack was talking about Thomas Jefferson, that he ended up, was it Thomas Jefferson or George Washington? Maybe it was George Washington. Ended up giving, when he passed away, that he willed his estate to
half of his estate
to the slave that ran his plantation. And so again, this is just another way of just creating chaos in our country by creating a false narrative and teaching it to our children so that they can go on to universities and college and carry on that message to eventually destroy our country. The long game is what they're after. You want to read this really quick?
Yeah, Daniel's saying
Yeah.
that there's an area in Woodland Hills where LA County's planning to plant a bunch of tiny homes to house homeless in the middle of a neighborhood. The homeowners are freaking out now. Yeah, and Woodland Hills is the beginning of the drive over from the downtown LA over into Ventura County.
Yes, this giving people free stuff has never worked, right? It's just creating, and that's why welfare has been one of the worst enemies to Black communities.
Absolutely.
And then not giving them law enforcement is one of the big. Those two things are going to simply destroy these Black
Lower
communities
income
and make
neighborhoods.
a bad problem even worse.
Absolutely.
And when we're talking about the homeless problem, the same thing. It's the very same thing, is that they're trying to solve it with money and giving them free stuff, and giving them free drugs,
because that's
free alcohol.
That's a socialist system.
Yeah. And it creates more problem. They went from, let's say 100,000, let's just say, I'm not sure the exact numbers. I'm just going to use it, but because it's increased 300% since they started giving them free stuff. And so LA's going, I wonder why it's increasing by 300%. Well, that's when you started the programs of giving them free motels, which they don't like to live in, by the way, free alcohol, free narcotics, free paraphernalia to shoot their narcotics.
And cash cards.
And cash cards. They're going, we can't figure out why it's increasing 300%.
And you ask the homeless people, the average of them is like, I like living off the grid.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bizarre. So bizarre. All right. So did you come to a conclusion in your article? Is there something, was there a big, like, this is what we need to do moment, or just like, hey, where are you?
I said, where are you? Basically, where's our Black Robe Regiment today? And I ended with Apostle Paul's statement that, and please pray for me. I'm an ambassador in chains, to give me the power to preach the gospel boldly, as I've been commanded to do. And we've all been commanded to do that. Everything in the Bible. And I said, the Bible's not a bunch of fairy tales. The Bible's a living, living, breathing word of God that's applicable today. We have to take those examples and say, if Moses can do it, if Elijah could do it, I could do it. If the Black Robe Regiment could do it, we can do it. It's not just fairy tales.
So I'm going to end this on this common thing I'm always saying, and it's just, you got to stop being silent.
Yes.
We no longer can be known as the silent majority. You can't. It's the reason we're in this problem.
Before you know it, you're not only not going to be the majority, but you're not going to have an opportunity to speak. I'm telling you, we will see the day, and I think it's in our lifetimes, where the government will clamp down on the rights enjoyed by churches, and by then it'll be too late, because the tax exempt status, the special status that churches have in order to operate, will be taken away, because they'll think it's easy to do it. Nobody's defending it.
They've already started working on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see. It'll be too late.
And that includes people that are afraid to speak up because they might lose their job. Now, I understand. People are saying, I've heard this all the time. Well, I can't say anything because then I'll get fired from my job. Well, at some point, you're going to lose everything. Right? We're going to lose everything. We're going to lose our kids. We're going to lose our schools. We're going to lose, the ability to work. People are not going back to work right now because they make too much money on staying home, getting unemployment.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, you see this all the time. All these stories of restaurant owners and small business saying, I can't hire anybody.
And the big companies getting the PPP loans. So they don't want to. They don't want to go back to a regular workforce because they've gotten all this money from the government to let people sit at home.
Yeah,
it's messed up.
So we can't do this. People need to go back to work. We need to fill our worth. Is that a right way of saying that?
Yeah.
Like sometimes our work and what we do for a living, is who we are, and it's a great deal of accomplishment comes out of doing a good job and good work. And if we begin to take that away, our children are not going to know anything else. Hey, mom and dad don't have to work; they just get money off of the government. That's how I want to live. We've seen this happening currently right now in Argentina. What's this? I always get the country wrong. That just switched over. Put an article up on my Facebook page. Not Argentina, but Argentina is one of them.
Venezuela.
But Venezuela is not. This is happening right now. This happened right now, just within our lifetime.
Absolutely.
Just in the 1990s, they were like the third richest country on our continent, and now it's destroyed and in chaos. And people are dying, and it's just that should be an example. It's like my example: just drive from Orange County through Los Angeles into Ventura County. You'll see it in action right there. All right. Anything else that we missed on your article? The biggest message is we have to stop being silent. I love seeing the parents at these school board meetings just saying, we've had enough of this crap. Our kids need to be unmasked, and they're screaming. We have in Arizona, you had the group of people that chased off the school board members that were in place, and they quit on the spot, and they voted in a new school board member right there in the meeting.
I mean, you saw it in your own district with Leandra. They tried to get rid of the conservative on the board, and people fought back and defended her and demanded the schools open. And look, less than a month later, the schools opened.
Absolutely. So it's time to speak up. We got to do it.
This is a republic, folks.
Yeah, it's now or nothing. It's going to be nothing pretty soon.
Yeah, get involved.
Yeah, and we're in this together.
Yes.
All right. Anything else?
That's all for me.
I think we covered it all.
I think
you did a good job getting up here.
Thank you.
And rescuing me.
You was doing a great job.
I was just laying the foundation.
I'm just your Robin G, my Batman. Catwoman.
I love that. Oh, do you have a Catwoman outfit?
No, I could buy one though.
Oh, let's get one of those. Oh, sorry. Are we still on?
Yeah. I think my daughter has some cat ears so you can put on. Role play.
All right. That's what? We got to go. All right. We love you, my friends. We'll take care. We'll take care of you. No, that's not what I meant to say. You got me all thrown off. I meant to say take care and we'll see you later. Not we will take care of you. No.
Meow.
This is all I can do is use my voice.
We're going to have a picnic now. So if you want to see our picnic on our bed, check out Annie's Facebook page.
Yes. Time to take a stand.
Yes.
Let's do it. All right, my friends. We love you guys.
Have a great night.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Oh, we have sushi.
Yes. No, poke.
Oh, poke.
Same
Poke
thing.
and sushi is the same thing. All right, goodbye.
Fish.
Talk to you later.
Good night.
Speak up. Stop being silent. And that's it. You just wait for me to push that button, aren't you?
Yeah.